Hey there! Every single time you send an email, do some online banking, or even just browse the web, there are these invisible shields working around the clock to protect you. So in this explainer, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at these network security controls and figure out how our digital world is actually kept safe.
So have you ever really stopped to think about that? We trust so much of our lives to the internet, but what is really standing between your private information and someone who wants to get their hands on it? Well, it's not magic, that's for sure. It's a really carefully designed system of defense.
All right, probably the best way to get your head around network security is to picture a medieval fortress. It's got the high walls, the deep moat, guards walking the perimeter, secret passages, and of course, treasure rooms that are heavily protected. Every single security control we're about to talk about is like a different part of this fortress, and they all have to work together to keep the kingdom, which is your data, safe.
Okay, so what's actually in this fortress that's so important? Well, it all boils down to three core principles, known in the security world as the CIA Triad. And no, not that CIA. These are the crown jewels. They are the ultimate reason every single security measure even exists.
These three ideas are literally the bedrock of all security. So, confidentiality, that's pretty simple. It's about keeping secrets secret, making sure a private message is only read by the person it's for. Then you have integrity. That means making sure that data hasn't been messed with, that the message wasn't changed on its way to you. And finally, availability. This one's crucial. It just means you can actually get to your data when you need it. Every defense we build serves at least one of these three goals.
Okay, so let's start our tour of the fortress at the very edge. Before an attacker can even get close to the castle keep, they've got to deal with the walls, the gates, and the moat. This is our first and maybe our most important line of defense.
The whole point of a strong perimeter is to filter out the obvious threats right away. It's like having a guard at the main gate who checks everyone's story before they come in, turning away anyone who looks sketchy or doesn't have a reason to be there. This just massively reduces the number of threats your internal defenses ever have to deal with.
And the absolute star of the show here, the Great Wall of our digital fortress, is the firewall. It stands right between your trusted internal network and the wild, untrusted world of the internet. It literally inspects every little packet of data trying to get in or out and decides, based on a super strict rulebook, whether to let it pass or just drop it.
And of course, just like real castle walls evolved from, simple wooden fences to these massive stone fortifications, firewalls have gotten way smarter over time. They started out as pretty basic packet filters, but now we have what are called next-generation firewalls that can do these incredibly deep inspections of the data itself. They act more like an intelligent security chief than just a simple guard at a gate.
So what happens when you actually need to meet with visitors from the outside world? I mean, you don't just bring them right into the royal throne room, right? No way. For that, our fortress has what's called a DMZ, or a demilitarized zone. Think of it like a secure outer courtyard. It's where you put your public-facing stuff, like your website. Visitors can go there and interact with it, but they're still kept safely outside the main castle walls, far away from your really private network.
Okay, so we've got the walls covered. An attacker hopefully hasn't breached the perimeter, but what about the messages being sent inside the fortress between trusted people or sent out to allies? We have to make sure those can't be snatched out of the air and read, and that brings us to our next layer of defense, securing the message itself. This is where encryption comes into play. Just think of it like writing a message in a secret code. We take our normal, readable data, that's called plain text, and we use a secret key to scramble it all up into an unreadable mess called ciphertext. And the only way to unscramble it is if you have the correct key. This is the tech behind that little lock icon in your browser, and it's what makes VPNs secure.
Now, there are basically two main flavors of this secret code stuff. Symmetric encryption, think of that like having a single key that both locks and unlocks a box. It's super fast, but the tricky part is you have to find a secure way to share that one key. Asymmetric is way more clever. It uses a public key that anyone can have to lock the box, but only you have the unique private key to unlock it. It's a bit slower, but it's much more secure for sharing information out in the open.
Okay, so scrambling the message is great for secrecy, but how do we know someone didn't change the message while it was on its way? That's where content integrity comes in. I love this analogy. It's basically the unbroken wax seal on a royal letter. It's proof that the message you're looking at is authentic and hasn't been tampered with.
So how do we make this digital seal? Well, we use something called cryptographic hash functions. A hash function takes your data and generates a unique, fixed-length digital fingerprint for it. If even one single letter in the original message changes, the fingerprint changes completely. It's an almost foolproof way to verify if a file or a message is the real deal.
All right, so our perimeter is solid. Our messages are scrambled and sealed. But what about the people who are actually supposed to be inside the fortress? Not everyone should have access to the treasury or to King's private chambers, right? We need to control who can go where and what they can do.
First things first, we have to be absolutely positive that someone is who they claim to be. This is called strong authentication. You know, a single password, that's kind of like just knowing a secret knock at the door. Strong authentication demands more proof. It's the whole reason so many services are pushing you to use two-factor authentication, or 2FA.
And this proof has to come from different categories. First, there's something you know, which is your password or a PIN. Then there's something you have, like a code that gets sent to your phone or a physical token. And finally, something you are, which is biometrics like your fingerprint or your face. By making someone provide at least two of these, it becomes so much harder for an imposter to get in.
But even once a user is authenticated, we're not done. That's when access control kicks in. Think of it like the master of keys for the entire castle. Just because you're allowed inside the main gate doesn't mean you get the key to every single room. Access control is what determines exactly which doors your key is allowed to open.
And there are a few different strategies for handing out these keys. Now, while some models let individual owners decide who gets access, honestly, one of the most common and, frankly, most sensible ways to do it is with role-based access control, or RBAC. Instead of giving permissions to individual people, you give them to a role, like accountant or marketing intern. And then anyone who gets assigned that role automatically gets the right set of keys. It's just so much more efficient, and it cuts down on human error.
And all of this works because of one critical, fundamental rule, the principle of least privilege. It's so simple but so powerful. It just means don't give anyone more access than they absolutely need to do their job. A castle guard doesn't need the key to the treasury, right? This principle drastically minimizes the potential damage if an account ever gets compromised.
But let's be real. What if, despite all of our defenses, a really skilled attacker manages to slip past everything? Well, this final layer isn't about keeping them out anymore. It's about finding them, understanding what they're trying to do, and then neutralizing them. It's time to set some traps. And this brings us to one of the absolute coolest tools in the cybersecurity playbook, the Honeypot. It's a fake, it's a decoy. In our fortress, it's like setting up a fake treasure room that looks really tempting and poorly guarded. The whole point of the Honeypot is for it to be attacked. It doesn't have any real data, so there's no risk, but it lets the security team watch intruders in a totally safe environment. You've got a couple of types. A low-interaction honeypot is pretty simple. It might just mimic a few vulnerable services to quickly flag that an attack is happening. But a high-interaction one? Whoa, that's a whole different ballgame. It gives the attacker a full, real, but totally isolated operating system to play in. This lets the defenders study their tools, their techniques, and their motives, gathering priceless intelligence to make the real fortress that much stronger.
So there you have it, from the huge outer walls of the firewall all the way down to the sneaky inner traps of the honeypot, we've seen how all these layers work together to build a pretty amazing digital fortress. But here's the thing, security is never, ever finished. It's a constant arms race. Which leaves us with one final and really crucial question to think about. As the attackers and their methods get smarter, what will the fortresses of tomorrow even need to look like?